Hi, we're here with Kim Copeland, Medium Kim, and we are going to be doing a show about sort of fall festivals and things we've learned about Halloween in honor of the season. And we're not making you dress up and put on costumes or anything. You just get to sit back and enjoy and discuss this trivia. If you are a person lucky enough to have enough friends that you can go out and celebrate the holiday with. So Kim, do you want to say something?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about this because there's so many different cultural things happening. It's not just Halloween.
I
There's
know.
St. Martin's Day. There's all kinds of things happening in Mexico, the Day of the Dead. And yeah, so it'll be fun to talk about that.
Yeah, it's kind of fall is that transitional time when we go from the light to the dark, and we're just getting continually darker and darker. I noticed this morning, I thought, oh, I said, why am I feeling like I should be up? And I realized that it's getting so much darker in the mornings now.
Yeah,
And then they'll change time again, and that'll screw us all up. What can I
they
say?
will. Next week, I think.
Yeah, I know. So, do you want to start with your St. Martin's Day, which is kind of a holiday
Oh,
again?
sure. But that's November 11th, but we can start with
Oh,
there.
sure.
Absolutely. So I do remember because my children went to a Waldorf school, which is a school that actually the whole philosophy came from the German philosopher Rudolf Steiner. And so there's a lot of German traditions in that school. And it's a school, they have there's a lot of color therapy, actually music, art. And so they really celebrated the holiday, the saints days and all,
Mhm.
all the holidays, and they were always a little different. So St. Martin's Day, I do remember because first of all, I have a spirit guide named Martin. So
Oh,
St.
cool.
Martin's Day was a very special day to me. But what it is on November 11th, and of course it's at dark, and then the children make lanterns. And they usually use a glass jar, and they glue that paper, like real thin paper around it,
Mhm.
layers of it, so make it real pretty. And they put just a little handle on it made out of oh gosh, the wire. It's kind of a wire handle with this
Mhm.
little colored wire.
Yeah.
Anyway, so and then they'd put a little candle on the bottom. And then the children all lined up, and and it was usually cold, and so they're all dressed up. In Waldorf school, everybody was over warm. I mean, like God, they would have layers and layers of clothes. I mean, I don't know, that they always felt like the kids need to be warm all the
Mhm.
time because they felt like they could learn better and take in the world if
Mhm.
their bodies were warm. So anyway, but at nighttime, we would line up, adults and children, light the lanterns, and we would walk and sing, and all these the St. Martin songs. I wish I remembered what they are, and we would travel around like in nature, like a park even, and so we'd have our little the light to show us in the dark, the light of to
Mhm.
show us the way. And then when we would make a little loop and maybe have a little fire, at the
Mhm.
after we made our little walk, come back to have a
Mhm.
fire, and then there would be like roasted chestnuts and things like that, and maybe apple cider. And so it was just a wonderful memory of the St. Martin's Day. Yeah, and again, it originates from Germany, and it's about St. Martin, and apparently St. Martin was almost like not like St. Valentine, but he gave. He would give to the poor. He would give his coat, and that's one of the reasons they did it in the
Oh,
at
that's why. Okay. Yeah, that would make sense.
coats. They have, and then he would give his coat to the poor. Lots of stories about that. So that's St. Martin's Day.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of lumps them. I think when we were looking at different things for the fall, it kind of lumps them in with Halloween because of the lanterns and trying to provide
Mhm.
warmth for people and that sort of stuff.
Right. But it really wasn't at all. There was no costumes or not
No, none
talking
of that
about
stuff.
anybody dying or anything like that. Or, yeah.
Well,
Oh.
my holiday has always been Halloween, and I loved Halloween when I was a kid because my parents were married in Canada in the 1930s, and they don't have Halloween, or didn't at that time have Halloween up in Canada. So they got married on the 31st of October, thinking it was just a day, right? You know, and what it ended up being that they had always had someone, Gretchen's shown up. We had someone who thought she wasn't coming, but see if she makes it in. This is about Dolly Pythons, but we always went out trick or treating. Gretchen?
That's that stuff in the country.
Furious?
I can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, it's me, it's Gretchen. How are you doing?
We're doing fine.
Good.
We let Cidnee go because we weren't sure if you were coming, but that's fine. What we're talking about now is Halloween, which has always been a well thought of holiday at Dolly Python's in Dallas. And I was just starting to go into some Halloween traditions that are around the world. Do you want to stay in the recording, or I know you were having problems with your reception out where you are.
My reception is really, really bad, and there's a lot going on around me, but I will fill in when you ask me to, and otherwise I'll just put myself on mute.
Okay, put yourself on mute, and we'll talk a little bit about what the stuff we used to see at Dolly's. Okay. Because that has to do with the haunted house part of Halloween. But when I was a kid, I lived in an old Victorian neighborhood, so all the houses look like just were these incredible Victorian fantasy mansions. And I also lived just far enough from Chicago that several of the people who'd been part of Al Capone's gang ended up settling in my hometown. And there was one huge estate that always had its gates closed every other day of the year, but on Halloween, they would open up the gates, and they had standard poodles. If you've never seen a standard poodle, they're like huge. They're like great big dogs. And I was a tiny little kid. And so it was always who had the guts to go up to the door and get candy from this spooky house that had this mafia guy in it. And he had a butler in full dress. And that guy was there all the time. And he'd open the door, kind of like Lurch, and he'd, hand you, and they just didn't hand you candy. They gave you candied apples. I mean, you hit the jackpot. If you can make it down that sidewalk and get out alive, you came out with a lot. Anyway, that's the kind of Halloweens I had as a kid.
Oh, fun.
But my family was Irish, and Halloween is actually, it's a Celtic Irish holiday that got brought over here. And it was also done in other parts of Europe and had different names, but in Ireland, it was called Samhain. And one of the things, when I was looking stuff up, and I knew this story before, but I wondered, why do they call a pumpkin that's carved out with a candle in it a jack-o'-lantern? Well, the reason they do is because pumpkins were originally turnips. And I've seen pictures of it, and I have a funny cartoon if I can get to it. Aha. This little gray guy here is the turnip, and this is the little pumpkin. And Mom says, go ahead, say hello to your grandma turnip. She came all the way from Ireland. Why are you hiding behind me? And he goes, she's super scary. And if you're looking at this picture, she's super scary. And Mom says, Halloween's supposed to be scary. And the little kid goes, not like that. And I got to admit, that was pretty. And then when I saw a bunch of those cutouts, a bunch of images of those turnips, that's what they look like. And of course, once they came over here and they found lovely empty gourds and easy to carve pumpkins, we gave up on the turnips. But the reason they put turnips out with a lamp in it was because Stingy Jack, who is another Celtic weird character, he fooled the devil one too many times. And so the devil kind of had it with him, and the devil cursed him to have to live on earth forever and carry around the only light he had was a little lamp inside the turnip. So people put their own turnips out so that Stingy Jack wouldn't think to come there. Samhain is typical of the transition from light to dark kind of festivals. And I was looking at some other things that had to do with it. And the Celts actually were the ones that started wearing costumes. They believed that in that time when the veil was thin, if you had a debt with someone that was on the other side, they might come looking for you. So they would wear things that were untypical for them to wear. I mean, even to the point men would wear skirts on that day. I mean, they really did costumes. And then the black and the orange we traditionally see with Halloween, I thought maybe the orange came from pumpkins, but it was actually that on Halloween, on All Hallows Eve, Samhain, they would burn fires to keep the darkness away and to keep the thinning veil away. And then on the next day, which they had another name for us called Mahan, I think is when I looked it up and had Google pronounce it. But that day was the day they would go and honor their graves, just like we have Day of the Dead in Mexico and other things. And it ends up actually the Day of the Dead was in the spring. And the Catholic Church, when it was winning the Irish over, moved it to Halloween to take some of the edge off Samhain. It was kind of their way to dilute because people weren't giving it up. They were still carving their turnips and stuff. And as I told Kim and I always have this problem. People come up and they go, oh, who is the one? Tell me when the one is coming into my life. So I found some things. So if you want to try this on Halloween, it says to peel an apple and then take the apple peelings and toss them over your shoulder and turn around. And it's supposed to create the initial of the person that's going to become your beloved. I've never tried it. Can't swear to it. Don't know nothing about it. But the other one that's famous, of course, if you've ever been to a slumber party, is scrying, where someone puts a mirror in a dark room with just a candle and you stare into it and you're supposed to see the face of the person you're going to fall in love with. But the one that freaked me out the most was apple bobbing. Suitors were assigned to each apple, so they'd like scratch an initial on an apple. And then they put them in the thing of water, and the women would bob for it, the young women, the young girls, and whatever initials they got would be the initial of the person they're supposed to be in love with. So those were some, isn't that, I mean,
amazing, all these little suspicious things that we do, right? That we
right.
really start believing. And I think in some cultures, they still carry a lot of suspicious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much in America, probably, but some cultures really do.
Well, the one for bobbing for apples actually came from England, and it became more prevalent in the early 1800s in the US. And they also did it in England. Trick or treat has kind of two common things I think it is. One is because the day after Halloween was All Souls Day, and that's when everyone went and prayed for the souls of their dead. The more prayers a dead person can get, I guess it's like subscriber numbers in YouTube. I don't know, but you want to get as many as you can. So the wealthy people would make cakes and they would give them to the poor people and say, go pray for my relatives. And so those became known as soul cakes. And then the other thing was that they would actually put food out on the doorstep. And that was and this is a Day of the Dead thing. I know that they put food on the graves in some places. And so anyway, that was a way to that's why that became part of trick or treat. You put something out and keep the goblins away. And for those of you wanting to see a full moon on Halloween, it was last year. It only happens once every 19 years. And it was 2020 was a full moon. We're now into a quarter moon.
That's amazing. It was on 2020, huh?
Yeah. And I talked to a friend today and he said, well, I saw it. I went out and looked at it. I said, everybody else was hidden in their homes. They weren't going anywhere. So anyway, Kim and I were talking about fall festivals. And then I was going to talk, and the other voice you heard, that's Gretchen. Gretchen, you can talk now. Is she still here?
I'm here. Yeah,
okay.
I'm here with you.
Oh, okay. Gretchen, unfortunately, has ended up in the far into central Texas, where reception is. I'm surprised she's on the phone at all. I mean, really, honest to God, guys. You have people who live in other parts of the country have no idea unless they live on the top of a mountain in Colorado somewhere. So Kim and I were going to talk about fall festivals. Kim has to kind of depart and leave us, not permanently, just Not into the nether regions, but and Gretchen and I are going to talk about ghost stories.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
You're
So
welcome
should
to
I
stay
talk-
if you want.
Yeah. Should I talk a little bit about the Mexican?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So we often hear of Dia de los Muertos,
Mhm,
the Day of the Dead. And it's not Halloween, it's actually November 3rd for that day. But
mhm,
there's a whole 3-day celebration in Mexico, and it changes from region to region.
mhm,
And so it's honoring, though, of the departed loved ones. That's
mhm.
what it really is. So it's really not even Halloween, but it is a wonderful celebration. And so it starts, the first day starts on November 1 at midnight, and it's about Dia de los Angelitos, of the children, the departed children, is the
Mhm.
first day. And so, and what they do on that day is they'll gather pictures of their children that are departed, and they'll maybe even have some toys and candy out, maybe some sugar skulls
Mhm.
with their names on it, and in honor of the children.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's the first day. And then the second day is for the adults, the departed adults, de los Fuentos.
Mhm.
I think I'm saying that right. I'm probably not saying it right, but something like that.
You're doing much better than I do.
And so during that day, on the second day of this, they'll do more adult celebrating. They'll have tequila or parties and that kind of thing. Again, and they'll have the skulls and maybe their names etched on the skulls. And, again, it varies region to region and how they do this. And I remember actually in my old hospice, at this time of year in my old hospice in Oregon, we would have a whole table full of the Day of the Dead, and we would bring our pictures of our family members and flowers, and just make a little altar for everybody in honor of this festival. And then the third day is the Day of the Dead, the official Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos. And that's the day when they would clean the graves. They also have a lot of marigolds for the flowers, which I think is interesting that those are yellow. And, in the spiritualist church, they have sunflowers that represent going to heaven, as the whole idea that life never ends,
Right.
So here we have a similar color, or same color flower, basically. And they also do, that third day is when they do all the parades and dressing up and the dancing and music, all that, eating.
Mhm.
They'll even have a place at the table for them, the departed loved ones, and it's a celebration, and it's not somber at all, which is kind of when you see. Although, you've seen, I'm sure everybody's seen it, how they dress in the white, they put the white face on in the skull. And that always creeps me out. I don't know. I have a hard time looking at that for some reason. It just really is creepy to me. So but now that I know that it's really just a celebration, then it's a little easier to take, but it still is hard for me to look at.
Yeah, I'm not wild about skeletons.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I really, but I know it's a big deal bringing and actually, so here's a skeleton. I guess have a little idea of some of the skeletons, right? Being in Texas here, there's a lot of the celebration here.
Oh yeah.
San Antonio and all along the Rio Grande.
Yeah,
so it's a big deal here. Yeah.
Well.
So, but it's not Halloween, but it does seem like it would be part of Halloween, but it's really not.
I think it's just that time of year is the veil thinning, and that's one reason why the disembodied Gretchen is with us, is because I worked in her store, Dolly Python's. I read cards there, and we had some interesting ghost stories. So not ghost stories, they're just energetic things that were there. Anyway, so thank you, Kim. You can stay as long as you want.
Okay.
Okay.
I might stay for just a few more minutes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, Gretchen, are you there?
I
There
am
you
here.
are.
Hi, how are y'all?
See, there is a Gretchen.
We are, there is a Gretchen. So I am actually about to get Furious in the bath. My son's name is Furious, and we're in a double wide trailer in the middle of Dallas, or middle of Texas, and it's a joy. So
And as
yeah,
for,
I've
for
had the
people
store
who
for
need to
16
know, Furious is not a pet. Furious is her son. That's his name.
It's my son. So, and he lives up to his name.
Yep.
But
He's a sweet.
Yeah, he's a sweet boy. So I've had the store for about 16 years, and it is a how would you say? We just have all kinds of things that it's a secondhand store, and so things come and go, and they come and go as they please, and it just depends. Sometimes we have too much chaos and energies, and everything from light to dark, and all the in between. Excuse me. And you know, I'd like to say that I've kind of I guess I'm immune to a lot of it, because I deal with a lot of going into people's houses and handling different people's objects and things like that. So I'm not an empath by any means, but I think I blocked myself off from it. But with that being said, I do have a lot of let's see, I'll hear whispering, I'll hear my name. As of late, we have two different sides of the store, and on our clothing side, I guess there's some that just stay over there and they just whisper and they say our names and they talk, and I'll hear my name and I'll be like, "Did you say something?" And customers or employees will be like, "No." Who's calling me? And you know, it's always just it's more mischievous on that side. And then you get over on the other side, and I think Nancy can probably describe it a little bit better. It's a soldier, and he is attached to the ground, I guess. And
Yeah, he's a Confederate soldier, and people have come up to me and they said, "Oh, how cool! You have people in vintage dress here." Boy.
Yeah, and so he's just kind of. Are you okay? Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry. Oh, you want to do it? Okay. So let me put you all on mute for a second. Nancy, I'll let you fill up. And
Okay, I'll talk about the soldier.
So I'm not interrupting.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my first experience at Gretchen's was she'd hired me to reach row. And I read on Saturday and everything was fine. And she had me over in this corner and there was this big black screen right beside me, which I assume was blocking out the light in the window that was right there. And I was sitting there, and it was in January, and I was sitting next to it, and I heard somebody go right by the store that had snow tires on their car, because you know that roaring, that kind of growly sound snow tires make, which is why you're not supposed to drive them on roads that aren't for snow, because they tear them up. So I heard this go right by me, and I went, "Oh, somebody's out with their snow tires." So then I'm sitting there, and about a half hour later, I hear it again, and I'm going, really, honest to God, people in Dallas don't have snow tires. I mean, they just don't. So I go out and I look, and there's no cars in the street. So I come back and I'm looking around where I'm sitting, and I put my crystals, kind of banged them up against where I thought the noise was coming from. And finally Gretchen came in, and I said, "Gretchen, I just want to tell you, there's this noise coming off this part of the building." And then one of the other vendors, he came by and he said, "You didn't tell her about that screen, did you?" And Gretchen was like, "Well, it's never caused any problem." Anyway, they decided to remove it. So he came with gloves on to move it, and he moved it out. And I said, "What are you going to do with it?" And he said, "I'm just going to get it out of here. We should have gotten out of here a long time ago." And I was like, "Okay." And I just thought, it's just an old black screen that you were using to hold something up. I couldn't figure it out. I found out later it was not black. It had Victoriana stickers all over it. but it had been purchased from a house where there'd been a murder in the room where it was.
Wow. Wow.
And when Gretchen said they don't feel it, the vendors who deal with this stuff all the time, they really don't, because they can't. I mean, they wouldn't be able to go out and buy the stuff they need to buy. They wouldn't be able to keep their business going. So Buck took it out back and he chopped it up with an axe and put it in the dumpster so no one else would take it home by accident. And that was my second day at Dolly's. And from then on, my job was to not just read cards there, but to sage and salt and to help the girls because we mainly had young women working as our sales staff, to help them deal with it. Cidnee says she's going to come back in a second. Cidnee's the manager at the store now. And the reason I got to thinking about this was Gretchen called me because the Civil War soldier was always back in this corner. And I had figured out a long time ago he was a guardian. He was not going to hurt anybody. He was just watching over what he thought was his space to guard. I have no idea why he settled there. The store's in an old Piggly Wiggly that was built in the early 1900s. So, you know, it could have been his family home was on that ground. It was that kind of area. It's a very old part of Dallas. And he was there consistently. And then, you know, and like I said, people would say they'd seen him. Somebody said, I thought I saw someone back there, but there's not anybody back there now. And I'm like, oh. And we never knew his name. We never knew much else about him. But after COVID started, I pulled out of Dolly's in February of 2020 before everybody else shut down. I just told her I couldn't go back, that I thought that this thing was coming and it wasn't safe for me to be out there. And she was really great about it. She's like, fine, go home. You know, when it goes away, they won't have you back. The first time I went in the store was June of 2020. And I walked in the store to pick up a check and I was all masked up and, you know, woo-woo. And that woo-woo, not the woo-woo that like we deal with. And I was standing there and I goes, he's gone. And I went back to the area he stayed in and he was gone. And Gretchen said, I told her, I said, where'd he go? And the message I got from my guides was he didn't feel he needed to be there for them right then.
Oh.
Now she's telling me that she told me a couple weeks ago he's back.
Oh, wow.
So we have no idea where he went, what he was doing. But
Wow.
But
oh my goodness.
But you know, there's things that happen in the store, and I wish Gretchen was here to talk about it some more. But one time Gretchen had gotten a whole. Okay, Gretchen's coming back, and that's Furious's voice.
That's Furious's voice, and I'm sorry, he's in the bath, but it's about to start raining here, and we have a whole. Betty's trying to load up the truck, so all the stuff doesn't get wet.
Okay.
So about, I guess maybe 8 to 10 years ago, we had another, a lady who was at the store for a long time. She channeled and she also read palms, and she came every Saturday and Sunday, was there, you know, kind of a store fixture for a long time. And she and this other vendor started fighting, and I was going through a transition in my life, and it was a real kind of a difficult time in my life. And then everybody started fighting for no particular reason, and the energy was just bad. And I think I was probably at the lowest point ever. And then I was just like, I'm just gonna find an investment banker and I'm gonna sell my business, because I couldn't deal with, I was just so unsettled. So that's what I was going to do. At the very last minute, for some reason, I was just like handed a card. I was told to contact this spiritual advisor / realtor. She came over to my house and she's like, your house is so dark. And she stayed with me and she prayed and just did some sort of spiritual work and helped me personally. And then she came to my store that Saturday, and she came with an assistant, and she brought all kinds of stuff, and she's from, I think she was from Louisiana, and she was just like, oh my God, she'd never been in the store before. So she was like, wow. So she walked through the whole thing, and she was there for 2 hours and chanting, and the woman, her wig was on backwards, and her assistant had to carry her out of there. And before I left, I'm serious. It was like, that woman's wig was just, I was like, how did your wig get on backwards? And she was nice to begin with, but at the end she was like over it. So and it was weird because the energy started, it became very hazy and foggy in the store while she was there. And towards the end, it was like the clouds had parted. It was very strange.
Wow.
The light and everything, the light will change in that building when the energy changes. It's very strange. But so she told me at the end to light this tea candle, leave it in the center of the floor, and let it burn out that night. And I was like, I am not going to leave a lit candle in my shop, because it's just, but you imagine it's just full of stuff. I mean, it could just go up in flames. And I was just like, it's just a dumpster fire waiting to happen, So I was like, no. And she grabbed me and she said, do it, just do it. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I did. And then the next day, the manager at the time, she came in the store and she's like, who closed? And I was like, well, no, everything should be fine. And she said, we had these shelves of cowboy boots, and all of them were thrown on the floor. And I asked her, I said, well, what did you do? I called the spiritual advisor. I was like, what did you do? She's like, I don't know how to tell you this. I don't know how to tell you this, that you understand it, but I put it in another dimension. It's in another dimension, and that's all you need to know. And I was like, I don't care that it's there. That, I don't care if ghosts are there. I welcome them. When you have ghosts, you have everything. And I was just like, but as long as they don't bother me. But it's just, she's like, I just put it in another dimension. I was like, okay, all right, there you go. So that's the only way I can really describe it. But the boots and everything were all over the floor. But the store stayed pretty lit for a long time, but the energy changes. It's a living, breathing thing, So, I just respect it and just let it be what it is. I don't try to control any of it. So my life works better that way. So, and then we had that horrible skull, Nancy, that we had to put salt around to scratch me.
Yeah. Gretchen's husband.
I'll let you tell that.
Okay.
I'm gonna put it on mute.
Okay. Gretchen's husband is also a dealer in antiques and curiosities, and he got a skull. And his store is on the other side of the wall from where Gretchen's is. There's a door in between, but it's not in our store. And because I sage and salt and do all that stuff all the time to take care of any residual energy that came in with
dragon's blood. I still have cans of dragon's blood. So
okay.
You explain. I don't
And
know if they know what that is.
So Gretchen said, nobody's coming in Benny's store. And I said, well, that's weird, because they've been in our store. So she went over and she said, well, go over and see if you can walk around and see what you feel. And I came back and I said, there's something creepy in the store. And she said, yeah, it scratched me. And I said, what? And so I sat and talked with him, and the only thing he'd acquired that was really very different than the sort of normal, sort of crazy Texarkana and crystals and old furniture and stuff he'd gotten a human skull. And it was in this domed glass. And
it was not a typical, though. I mean, he sells remains all the time, but this particular skull was very old, and it had a hole drilled in it, like it was it looked like it came out of a catacomb.
Yeah, it looked
somebody
like
had taken it or something.
You know how the Native Americans used to trepan? in Central America. It came from something like that, someplace it wasn't supposed to be taken from. So I went over with Gretchen and I said, okay. And I surrounded the glass dome it was in with salt. And I, sage and did some things around it. And then I just told him, sell it. And he said, well, and I said, sell, I don't care what you sell it for, ship it off to somewhere else and that's what happened was he put it up on eBay. It sold like within a day. And then he packed it up and got it out of there. And there you have to go through all this stuff. By the way, when you ship human remains, you have to do all this paperwork. You just can't ship body parts around. Anyway, he got rid of it. And as soon as he did, his store went back to normal.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard stuff like that before too. About
Yeah,
skulls.
but those are extreme. I mean, the other things that we used to have a certain level of problem with, and they weren't a problem, but they would get those old wooden radios like you see in the 1940s that the families gathered around listening to fireside chat. For some reason, man, those radios, they must have been the focus of so much energy in so many households.
Mhm.
We had a couple of them that just turned themselves on and were playing radio stations. And the thing is, a lot of them were missing tubes and they weren't plugged in. So they shouldn't have been doing anything. I remember the girls called me one day, I was on my way in anyway, and they said, are you coming? And I said, yeah, I'm on my way. And they went, oh my God, get here. And when I got there, there were 3 women all scrunched together, walking around like one body. It's so funny. And the radio had gone off. And so I went back and I have a cleansing prayer that I say that sends entities, and I call in archangels to take them away. And sort of, I always say, it's kind of a rude way to say it, but it's a way where the archangel Zadkiel and the ascended master Saint Germain, they come in and they swoop through and they go through every piece of fabric, every cloth, every chunk of wood, everything, and take any negative or badly manifested energy up. And I always say it's like to the light. It doesn't say this in the prayer, but it's taking them up to the big laundromat in the sky. And they're going to run it through and turn it back into white light. And then they bring it back. So you're not depleting energy from where you are. So the girls used to say the violet flame every day to try and help keep the place together. But and sometimes they're not bad entities. I mean, the skull is something else, but
Yeah.
Gretchen got a whole, because we're in Dallas, there are people who've been shopping at Neiman's and Sakowitz and all of those premier clothing places. And this older woman had died. And Gretchen got up in her attic where she kept everything and she had it all perfectly preserved. And it was clothes, I think, that started in the late 1940s and went up into the mid 80s. And they were all the best handmade for this woman clothing. So the family trusted Gretchen to take good care of it. So they let her pick through and get what she wanted out of it first. And I didn't know this, but I was sitting there. Okay, here's Cidnee. Okay, this is another person who works.
And I'm probably going to go actually because anyway, blessings. But thank you. This is wonderful. I'm going to listen to this tomorrow or whenever you post it. Okay.
I'll let you know.
It'll be better for me in the daytime anyway, because this is getting a little scary.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you, Kim.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
This is Cidnee Patrick, and Cidnee Patrick is the manager of Dolly's, and Gretchen has scared the crap out of everybody. We talked about the skull. We talked about the screen that scared the crap out of me the first day I worked there. Talked about the soldier. And I was just telling him about an experience I had, and I'm sure you've run into this. Gretchen had gotten a whole bunch of clothes out of this estate for a very wealthy woman. And I was sitting there reading cards on a Saturday, and I kept smelling this perfume. And I knew what it was. And it was like my parents were very wealthy. I grew up steeped in white privilege in the 1950s. And so I remember the fancy schmancy ladies that came to our house smelling like this perfume. So I said to the girls, I said, are you guys using a new air freshener? Have you got something in the vent system? What's going on? And nobody else could smell it, just me. So I mentioned it to Gretchen when she came in, and she goes, well, I put some of this new group of clothing out, but we went over and, it had all been cleaned and it didn't smell like anything. But I could tell that the woman who owned the clothes was there. Now, I can't see entities. I've never seen the soldier. I know he's there. I even know in my mind what he looks like, but my eyes don't see them. But my daughter does. So I called her up and I said, Casey, you need to come down here. I need to find out if something's going on. And she came walking in. She looks around, and back in the far corner, but not the front door people come in, but the second front door, and then over to that corner. She said there was just a lovely, demure woman standing there, gray-haired lady, just watching everything in the store. And Casey said, I think she's watching her stuff. And she made sure we were treating it with respect, and then she took off.
That sounds very similar to, well, it rings true to the experience that I had just a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
That freaked me out to the point that I called Gretchen and I was like, Gretchen, can you explain this? And she hadn't been at the store, but I had, it was morning, I was opening the store,
Mm-hmm.
and as you walk around the counter to the back, to turn the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that sensation of when you walk into a room that someone has just left, like immediately, you could almost feel that whoosh of them
Mm-hmm.
walking by you. And so I had that sensation, and then I smelled the scent of Ralph Lauren Safari perfume. It was very specific because I
Mm-hmm.
used to wear it, and it was so strong, and it was almost like you could just, like in her wake, if you will. So strong that I called Gretchen instantly and I said, Gretchen, were you literally just in the store, and just left?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, no, why? And I said, well, somebody was. And I explained to her the scenario, and it was just crazy. It was such a weird sensation. That was my most specific, like my real experience. The other ones you can explain away by this or that, or there's too many to explain away, but that one was very specific.
Yeah, did she
It's
tell you
almost
about-
like
Hmm?
it's almost like you can't justify it, but then you justify it because you just don't know what it is, but it's not, there's no any logical explanation. Is almost like you're making excuses and you're trying to tell yourself you don't understand it, but you're trying to talk yourself out of it. But it's just, in normal terms, scientific terms, it's almost like how do you make sense of this? But like you said, Cidnee, it's just like you just state the facts, but then you realize that the facts are just kind of unexplainable, and you just accept that you're part of something, bigger that you can't really explain.
Like
So
the,
it's,
like the African mask, Gretchen, the one that flew off the pole and landed at the foot of a customer. And
yeah, like that.
yeah, and like
Exactly. Yeah.
Rob, who's a vendor there, he comes running around the corner and goes, Nancy, we need you now. And I'm like,
That sounds like Rob.
nobody needs on Sunday afternoons, usually not. So I go around and there's this mask lying on the floor. And I looked around and it was on the other side from a pole where it had been hung. And it was just sitting at the foot of this woman. And so Rob said, we got to do something with it. And I said, well, I'm not touching it. 'Cause I am sensitive to this stuff. So I went, and Rob went and got some gloves on, and he went and rehung it on the pole. And I used to carry a pack, not that we were paranoid or anything, but I had a whole saging kit and salt that I put out, and I put it around the ring of the pole, and I put it underneath the mask. And I said, you're going nowhere. You're staying there. And the whole time, this woman that this mask had literally flown across the room and landed at her feet, she's just standing there. So I go up and I said, are you okay? And she said, yeah, can I ask you some questions? And I said, yeah. She said, what the hell was that? Which is a reasonable question. And I said, well, I don't know, but it's some new masks. They just hung them the day before. And I said, they'll be gone as soon as we explain, but I don't know where to put them where they're going to cause any less harm. And I said, but are you okay? And she said, that's happened to me before. What?
So she's to blame. Oh my goodness.
I just told her, I said, did you ever get tested to see what your intuitive levels or what your skills might be? Because we all have different skills. And I used to have to put a big wall around myself to walk in there. I mean, and not that you need to do that, folks. It's an absolutely marvelous store. It has great antique clothing, great collector boots, used boots, all kinds of fun stuff. I don't know all what's in there because I haven't been there since February of 2020, except for to walk through quickly. Has one of my grids in the back protecting it. But it's a fun journey. And if you think you've got sensitivities, go into a vintage store.
Yeah, it is. The energy in the store is like right now, the energy is sort of unsettling. It seems like everything is just a frenzy, like inexplicable, more than your normal like retail frenzy. It's just like the weird, not negative necessarily, just more.
It's just change. We're in a real period of change, and we've got a whole lot of planetary things that are being part of that. I've been doing a series of shows about change. I lit 9 candles. Gretchen's done 9 candles more than a few times in that store.
Is that what I can do? Because can I teach the ghosts to clean up after themselves?
No, they don't. They're like kids. They're like bad kids. They don't.
My first experience was one from a fitting room experience. When I first started opening and closing the store, I would close the night before, and then I would open. So I was the last person out and then the first person in, presumably. And I went, and I always make sure, I always do a walkthrough to make sure everything is like not in the walk pathways and, just generally speaking, and the fitting rooms are cleared and all of that. So that was that. And I came in the morning to open, and in the fitting room, it was as if, and the clothes that were lying on the floor, it was like a set, like a pants and a jacket. And the way they were laying on the floor, it was as if somebody, like, they got startled and they got up out of them and just left them laying there. So, and it was clothes I had never seen before. They were like it was a uniform, in fact, I believe. And it was just there. And so that was my very first experience, and it was sort of inexplicable and kind of fun. It's a fun thing to tell the people who come to visit Dolly Python who want it to be haunted. Those are fun stories to tell.
Yeah, there's nothing in there, I think, that's ever wanted to hurt anybody. And I've met a ghost that wanted to hurt people. I don't go ghost hunting, folks. Just an unfortunate life experience. But and don't believe that stuff. Ghosts can't hurt you. Okay, and Gretchen is now gone. She said thank you, that her phone kindly went completely out because she's, like I said, in the middle of Texas doing nothing. I mean, the phone reception out there is terrible. But she said that things seem to be warming up or getting, a little more hectic. So I told her I'd send you the violet flame again. You could say that every day. It seems to work, keeps them at bay, kind of cleans them out.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how many. It seems like there's definitely more than a couple. I mean, it's like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if our space is haunted or if it's objects that are haunted.
It's the objects, except for the soldier. Except for the soldier. He's there watching things. It's because the intensity would come and go when I was there. And if it was haunted all the time, it would have been haunted all the time.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense, actually, because it's, as things come and go, it ebbs and flows.
Right. And there are certain kinds of objects that seem to attract more of that energy.
Such as?
That's one reason why I asked Kim to be part of this, other than doing the thing for Halloween. So now we're telling everybody ghost stories. But it really is that people get very attached to their stuff. And, I was talking to Gretchen one day about it. She put some jewelry out on the table by me and she said, should I buy this? And I put my hand over it and I said, those 3 things, you're going to put those off and sage them right now. And she said, okay. And we always had sage incense. We always had frankincense and myrrh and Palo Santo. Although the problem with the Palo Santo is it smells a little like an electrical fire. And that's not.
The stage isn't wonderful either, actually, but we do that on occasion.
Well, the other thing I used to use in there a lot, and now as everybody's getting their lesson on how to deal with this, is Florida water. Have you ever seen Florida water? Comes in a long, skinny bottle, and you just mix a few drops in a mister, and it's got a really lovely flowery scent, and it's a Native American way of, because my lungs finally got to the point that I really couldn't sage effectively because I've had pneumonia a couple times. So I would go around with the Florida water, spraying it around, and that would work. And then I'd salt. I'd salt the doors. And I'll tell you, anybody watching this, you haven't been in the store, you don't understand, but eventually I was ending up reading the cards where I was right across from the cash register place. And then I could look to my right and see the dressing rooms, right? And that funny back bathroom that no one ever goes in because it's full of stuff. And it was the last few months I was there, and I looked up and I go, oh, Gretchen had some electrical work done. And one of the girls said, no, it must have been a day when I went here. So I asked Gretchen, and she said, why do you think I had electrical work done? And I said, because I can see the silver conduit poles that are for electrical wires in that corner. And she said, they've been here since the day you came. We'd finally gotten what was ever up in that corner out.
I've had experiences like that, and I can't seem to put my finger on. And when I try to articulate it to someone, I'm like, that just sounds ridiculous, and I'm just like, well, I'll just let it be.
Yeah, but see, I read tarot and I build rock things for people, so I'm long past crazy. And and being there was a great lesson for me in honing those protective skills. You should have been in Benny's space when they got rid of the barbershop that was actually for entertainment purposes only. It was probably selling more drugs than haircuts.
That's what I gather.
Yeah, and then there was a bridal shop, which was okay, but they gutted the whole thing out so Benny could move his store in there. And I told Gretchen, you need to get a real person, and I know a guy in Fort Worth who can come over and really deal with this. I think after the woman having the wig come off backwards on her, she wasn't interested in bringing one of those people in, but she met him. He's a really nice guy. But he told me, Nancy, just walk through there when it's completely empty. So it was the last day that the little worker bees were emptying out the last of the Beatrice. I mean, there was no store fixtures, nothing in there, just that completely empty space. And when I got to the doorway, I said, I'm supposed to walk through here. And they looked at me and they went, bruja. And I'm like, no, I'm not a witch. Just stop that. I'm just going to walk through. So I walked through. It was the oddest energy. It was like hands were reaching out of the wall, trying to grab me. And I had to stay exactly in the middle of that space. And when he got up to the front, it wasn't nearly as dark as it was at the back where the doors that go to the alley. And so I told her, I said, well, y'all can try to do this on your own. And I gave her all the little bits and pieces and said, I'd be over there doing the violet flame for 12 hours straight, but it was really tough. But they cleaned it out, and he never had residual energy. It's just stuff Benny brought in and stuff that drifts in with except for the vendor who died. You weren't around when his vendor died. No, you weren't there because I
don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, a vendor died, and Benny said, I think he's here. And so they didn't tell me where his booth was or anything. They just said, can you walk around and see if you can sense it? I walked immediately to his booth. It had a whole gray cloud around it. I could see it, and I don't usually see those kinds of things. And he was there, and he had died suddenly, and he had he'd been part of pet rescue and a bunch of other stuff. And he was very confused because, and he came there because a lot of his stuff that he was attached to was in that booth. It was furniture like he would have in his house. And I said, okay, I know you're here. And it's the only time I've ever done that. It's the only time I've ever crossed anyone over. And I did see the light kind of open up behind him. I said, head into that light and you'll be okay. And people are already taking care of your pets. You're not supposed to stay here. You're not supposed to stay here. So within an hour of when I moved him across, Benny got a phone call and they'd found a group that wanted to take all the stuff out of his booth, and it ends up some rescue group was having a big auction. And so they cleared his whole space out, took it for his beloved pets, got his stuff out of there the next day, and he was gone.
Wow.
But he was really gone. And anyway, so if you go to Dolly's, you may sense absolutely nothing. But I'm going to put in the description of the program, I'm going to put links so you can see what happens at Dolly's. Now, the Dolly's we're talking about is the Dolly's that's on Haskell Avenue. There's also a Dolly's on Bishop, which is in Bishop Arts District. But the stuff they sell is really cool. And, give it a look. And they have an Instagram. So join their Instagram. And
Definitely.
so you can follow the kind of stuff they have. And they don't
It's
put on an item, it's haunted.
We like to say it's part amusement park, part retail.
Yeah, it really is. Trust me, I hung out there from January of 2015 until February of 2020.
Yeah,
And
it's a six senses experience. That's for sure. It'll touch them all.
Yeah, it'll get you. And it's just an interesting place to see. And you guys have great stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
except for me, I remember when I first went there, the stuff they're selling is a lot of mid-century modern, which was all high style and new stuff when I was a kid. And I remember the first weekend I was there, I came home, my daughter said, well, what was it like? And I said, well, I just watched someone just raving about these antique end tables that she'd found. And they said, those were in my best friend's parents' living room. They're not antiques. That's something from when I was a kid.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's crazy to think. It's so funny to have people bring stuff in to sell and to resell, and that's vintage, and they're talking about 1980s. I'm like, oh my God, I lived that the first time. That's not old enough. It's not far enough removed.
Well, I used to be I was a sewer. I mean, I sewed my own clothes and stuff. So a lot of times the girls would bring, and of course I saw the Beatles the first time they sang in Chicago. I mean, I'm from that generation, so I'm in miniskirts and all that stuff. And they'd bring over the clothes because, sometimes it's the real thing and sometimes it's knockoffs. And of course, I lived with all of it, so I know what all the different seams look like.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd bring them over and go, which is this? And y'all are really good about that. You really keep an eye on that.
Yeah, we try to. It seems like it just coincidentally maybe, or just kismet for whatever reason, that everybody has a specialty that they know well, that keeps us all in check. So all those eyes looking at all sorts of different things. If you don't need it, we don't have it. That's for sure.
That's right. But it is a lot of fun. And I think that's our ghost stories for how to run a business. It's a ghost story. That's just scratching the surface. Trust me, we've had.
Yeah. Yeah, that same day that I, with the perfume incident, I got electrocuted the same day when plugging in the sign. I've forgotten that part. But when you were talking about the electricity, the electrical stuff, it reminded me. Yeah, so it's crazy. It's been unbelievably active. I've been there for over a year, so the whole year cycle, and it's definitely more active.
We're really going through a lot of energy shifts, and I think a lot of, just like there's a polarity you can sense in politics, there's a polarity you can sense in people. There's also a polarity in the spirit world and things moving across, and wanting to leave and not wanting to leave. All I can tell you is the only consistent spirit in that store is the soldier, and he doesn't hurt anyone. He protects.
I haven't gotten any negative energy at all, just more busy, frenzied, more busyness.
Yes, and that's what's happening. That's what I just did the 9 candles about. Is someone said this is the fastest October any of us have ever lived through. And if you think about how soon, last it was the 1st of October, and now it's the 26th. We're almost out of it.
Yeah, it has gone by unbelievably fast.
Okay.
I was just talking today about my, it seems like it's late, time changes late, and like my circadian clock is ready for it now. It's weird.
Mhm.
So it seems like everything is going faster.
Yes, this weekend it changes, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, okay, as a kind of wrap up to my people, and Cidnee, I will send Gretchen a copy of the Violet Flame if she's lost it. There used to be one hanging up by the cash register.
It may still be, but I don't believe it is.
Okay, and if any of y'all want the Violet Flame, you'll see my email below. If you email me, I have a copy I can just attach in a return email to you. And it is a lovely prayer, and it does do a lot, and you can protect your home, you can protect your business, you can protect your car if you're sitting in your car. And if, I don't know where y'all live, but if you drive in Dallas, that's always a good idea.
Right.
And I want to thank everybody for coming to our
Thanks
kind
for
of wildly candid Halloween late fall show. And I don't know what I'm going to title this, but anyway, thank you so much, Cidnee. Cidnee and I have met briefly, but I don't, since I never go anywhere, including to Gretchen's.
Well, I'm there always, so I look forward to seeing you again. But thank you so much for including me. I really enjoyed it. I'm sorry for the confusion before. So,
Well, no, I knew it was going to be like that because I knew I was dealing with Dolly Python.
yeah.
And anyway, thank you all for coming, and we appreciate it. Bye.